So that'll be 5. It just says, how can we convert from degrees to radians and from radians to degrees? That's our essential question. Very basic thing that we're trying to do here. But we can't do the unit circle. We can't set up the unit circle, which is going to be section 4 and section 5, if we can't convert from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So this is like the foundation for where we're getting ready to go. So if you're able to convert these, then it's going to make the next section a lot easier than it was before. So if you have something that's already in degrees, you're going to be able to change it to radians by multiplying by pi over 180. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And then if it's already in radians and you want to change it to degrees, you're going to multiply by 180 over pi. So it's just the opposite of each other. So if it's in degrees and you want to multiply it to radians, it also says, remember, the top is what you're converting it to. So think about it. If it's in degrees and you're changing it to radians, you're actually changing it into pi. If it's in radians and you're changing it to degrees, you're changing it into 180, which is degrees, because 180 equals pi. Okay, so if you look at this, I can probably make it even easier than that formula, but that is the formula to change it from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So now we're going to look at converting some of these. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. There's about 8 of them on here, and how to convert them from degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So we look at 90. If we have something that's 90 degrees, so we're going to take 90 degrees and multiply by pi over 180. Now, an easy way to think about it is you're dividing by 180, and then you're just putting pi on top. Okay? So I'm dividing by 180, but I'm going to put pi on top. So pi, so what is 90 divided by 180? Yeah, that's 0.5 or 1/2. So 90 divided by 180. So 90 divided by 180 is, and we're going to keep these in fractions, it's 0.5, it's 1/2. And then we have pi on top. So that would be 1/2 of pi, or just pi over 2. Okay? So think about, you should never put the pi into the calculator. You don't want to put pi into the calculator to convert these. We're just putting the pi on top here when we're changing it from degrees to radians. Think about 200. So I'm thinking in my head, basically, what is 200 divided by 180? So, and make it a fraction. What's 200 divided by 180?
1. So
make it a fraction.
Let's see. 10 over 9.
10 over 9. So the answer is 10 pi over 9. Everybody see what's happening here? You're putting pi on top, and you're just dividing by 180. That's if you're changing it from degrees to radians. Look at negative 150. So negative 150, you're putting pi on top, you're dividing by 180. So negative 150 divided by 180 in your calculator is, as a fraction, negative 5 over 6, and then we put pi on top. So negative 5 pi over 6. So if you look at all three of those are changing them from degrees to, so you're changing all of those from degrees into radians. So all we did was change it from degrees to radians. The other way. So if you're going from radians to degrees, you're going to take, so it's 7 pi over 6, and you're timesing it by 180 over pi. Now think about what that actually means. What I say, the easiest way to do it in the calculator is, when you're doing this, the pi's go away, right? So you're basically just taking the fraction and multiplying it by 180. Kind of like when you were changing it from degrees you were dividing by 180. Well, in this case, when you're taking it from radians to degrees, you're basically taking the fraction and multiplying by 180. So what's 76 times 180? 210. So it's 210 degrees. So if you notice, you're never putting pi in the calculator in any of these. We didn't type pi in the calculator at all. So that's 210 degrees. 5 pi over 4. So we're going to say 5 pi over 4 times 180 over pi. So that means the pi's, again, they go away. So what you're really doing is 5/4 times 180, which is 225 degrees. Okay, so that should make it, those should make sense. And all you have to know is pi is equal to 180. So that's why when you're going from degrees to radians, you're dividing by 180. And why when you go from radians to degrees, you're multiplying by 180. 5 radians. So there's no pi in this one. So if we think about it, we would actually do 5. And if you want to change it to degrees, you're multiplying by 180 over pi. Now, normally, that cancels out pi, right? But there's no pi in this one. So 5 times 180 is 900 over pi. And we actually have to put in, this is actually one of the, this is one of the rare times where you actually need to put pi in the calculator because it didn't cancel out. So you actually have to find what is 900 divided by pi. That will be our degrees. And it doesn't come out evenly. So it's what?
286.5.
Yeah. If you round it, what would it be? Would it be 5 or 6?
Yeah.
5.
Oh, it's 5, yeah, it was already 5.
Okay, so 286.5 degrees, and that is a rare one, okay? That was where pi, typically you got something pi and you're just multiplying it by 180. That was a very rare, but we want to show you that. Now, 540, you want to change that to radians, so we're going to do 540 times pi over 180. So we're basically saying what is 540 divided by 180?
3.
3, so it's 3 pi. All right, negative 7 pi over 8. We're going to change that to degrees. So we're multiplying by 180 over pi. And remember, this is a normal one, so the pi's cancel out. It's not like that weird number right there. So pi's cancel out, so you're basically just saying what's negative 7/8 times 180. And that is going to be a negative, what?
Negative 315 over 2.
Or negative 157.5.
Yes. Negative 157.5 degrees. So those are all the ways of changing degrees to radians and radians to degrees. So you got to be able to do those. I would kind of star the one that says 5 radians because that's the only one that was a little bit different if you see one like that. The others seem to be very simple. You never put pi in the calculator in the other ones. You were just getting rid of pi if you're changing it to degrees and multiplying by 180. So typically what I tell students is if you're going from radians to degrees and it has pi, you're getting rid of pi and multiplying by 180. If you're going from degrees to radians and it has pi, you're putting pi on top and you're dividing by 180. So when you go to radians, typically you get fractions. When you go to degrees, you're getting rid of the fractions. That's basically what's happening there. All right, we have something that is negative 7 pi over 8. We want it to be between 0 and 2 pi. So we're going to add 2 pi. So if it's negative 7 pi over 8, and we want to add 2 pi, well, I'm going to use the common denominator. 2 pi is 16 pi over 8, right? So negative 7 plus 16 is what? Negative 7 plus 16?
9.
Thank you. Sorry. 9 pi over 8. So we're at 9 pi over 8. Now, what is that in degrees? That would be something that you would want to know before you graph this. What is 9 pi over 8 in degrees? You could find it by doing 9/8 times 180, right? So what is that in degrees?
202.5.
You said 202.5?
Yeah.
Okay. So think about it. So let's make our mark. There's our standard form, right? We want about a 202 degree angle. So we're going to go 90, 180, and about 20 more. Stops about right there. And we've now made that's 9 pi over 8, which will be about 202 degrees. And there's 8.
What did we do to get 205?
Convert it from radians to degrees. So 9/8 times 180. So in B, we have negative pi over 6. So again, that's like negative 1 pi over 6. And we're going to add 2 pi. So that'll be plus 12 pi over 6. Negative 1 plus 12 gives me what? 11 pi over 6. So then we want to say, all right, what is that in degrees, just so we know. So 11 over 6 times 180 is
330.
Yep, 330. So a pretty big angle there. 330 degrees. You're adding 2 pi every time. You're either adding or subtracting 2 pi to get it to be positive. You either have to add or subtract 2 pi. So 2 pi, if your denominator is 6, 2 pi would be 12 over 6. If your denominator is 8, 2 pi would be 16 over 8. So it just depends what your denominator is. So a 330 degree angle, I'm going to put the vertex in the middle. 330 degrees is 90, 90, 90. That's 270. And then 60 more. It stops right there. So that's 330 degrees. So that is 11 pi over 6, which is the same as negative pi over 6. It's going to be the same spot. So you can just type in, as easy as in the first one, just saying negative 7 plus 2, negative 7/8 plus 2, and that'll give you 9 over 8, and negative 1/6 plus 2, and that'll give you 11 over 6. And on Desmos, decimal to fraction is just this little button right here. You can do that in your other graphing calculator too. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. All right. So I was probably making it a little harder by changing the denominator than I had to, but that was just one way of keeping it all even so I didn't have to go and change the fraction again at the end. Okay, so let's move down. The last two problems, C and D. C is negative 4 pi over 3. So again, in this one, we could just say negative 4/3 plus 2 if we wanted to. Remember, 2 in this case, though, is 6 over 3. So negative 4 plus 6 is 2/3, which is 2 pi over 3. So we got 2 pi over 3. So basically, that's what we're trying to graph, is 2 pi over 3. So we've got to figure out what that is. There's a couple ways. I could just look and say, well, pi is 180. So 2/3 of pi is going to be 120. Or you could do the math and say the same thing. 2/3 times 180, that gives you 120 degrees. So you kind of know what you're graphing. So here is 90, and then 30 more would be somewhere about right there. That's 120. So that is 2 pi over 3, which would be the same as negative 4 pi over 3. A negative angle would just be going around the other way. So it's showing you that those are the same angles, basically. They're just coterminal. We added 360, right? Negative 4 pi over 3 If you find what that is in degrees, that's negative 240. If you add 360, that's how you get 120. So that's what we're doing. When we add 2 pi, we're adding 360. All right, negative 3 pi over 4. So you can say negative 3 over 4 plus 2. That will give you your answer. 2 would be 8 over 4. So negative 3 plus 8 is 5 pi over 4. And 5 pi over 4 in degrees is, yeah, there we go. So 225 is going to be in that third quadrant down there. So you got 90, 90, that's 180. 225 is half of this third quadrant. So that is 5 pi over 4, which is the same as negative 3 pi over 4. Okay. So again, you're showing that those are the same. If I ask you to draw in C negative 4 pi over 3, you would draw it and it would be negative 240, which would be 90, 90, 60. It would go to here. If I ask you to draw negative 3 pi over 4, it would be 90 and 45. It would go here. So these are showing you that they're the exact same angle. All I did was work on graphing those in radians.